Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics and chat live 7 p.m. every Wednesday. I'm the host, Mark Devlin. I'm here today with multiple people who you should all be familiar with. Of course, there's Mary up there and there we go, and David and Mark Zegfeld, of course. Let me see what we got. David, we haven't seen you for a little while. How have you been?
All good, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been doing the usual stuff, some work on properties, a couple of hospital visits, and a very, very, very pleasant trip over to Arran in the gorgeous autumn sunshine. So I'm all chilled and it's all wonderful. So yeah, all good, but just keeping out of mischief, really.
Yeah, I was hearing today that there's going to be some kind of Indian summer next week, if you can believe such a thing. Who knows? We don't have a dedicated weather person on this channel. It's just hearsay. There could be some more good weather coming. Right, okay. So what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Me?
Yes.
Me, indeed. Tonight I will be talking about nationalists' attempts to breathe life into the moribund independence campaign, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, very good. Right. Now, Mark, how have you been as well? How are you doing?
Not too bad. I've been keeping busy, trying to keep myself busy, and been up and seeing hospital visits to my parents. So it's been all go.
Well, yes, I'm sorry to hear that, but hopefully situation will improve. Now, you have, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
I'm going to be talking about the homeless situation and the new figures that have come out that are looking pretty dire.
Well, along with, of course, the dire drug deaths as well.
Alcohol deaths.
So, yes, and so on, and alcohol deaths. Many terrible statistics. Now, Mary, how are you doing tonight?
Well, sorry, but I have a bit of a sore throat, so I'm going to take a bit of a rest tonight. I'm going to rest my voice and take it easy.
Very good.
And I would like to thank Mark Z for stepping in at the last minute to help me out.
Yay,
so thanks, Mark.
No worries. Remember that when his Zoomer comes.
Because as Mary is choosing the Zoomer tonight, although she's not participating in the actual contest. Okay, but
just answer these two questions. Did I swim to Arran? Unbelievably, guys, I got a ferry. There is at least one ferry running to Arran these days.
Right.
Good to know.
Exactly.
What have we got? Okay, of course, and we'll all be talking about whether Labour's troubles will mean the SNP have a chance to rise again.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Right, very good. So we're back with all that, much more. Mary won't be back with us until the end of the show, so we'll see you a little bit later.
Because I'll be doing all the comments as usual.
Doing all the comments.
I'll be managing the comments, so please make them short and snappy, and we'll try to get as many up on screen as possible.
Right. Okay. I think I've made a mistake in these things here.
Have you stapled the wrong order? It could be an interesting show, folks.
I hope not. Anyway, we'll be back in a second. Okay. Jeez. Right, welcome back to Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics and chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. Our aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that has done so much damage to Scotland's potential. Here tonight with Mark Zegfeld and David Griffiths, who are, of course, many of you will know, are our regular co-hosts. Mary is taking a break in the back. She's doing all the comments. As always, a huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, guys, sharing is caring. So the best thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube. And even if you don't subscribe, hitting a like is really important for algorithms and various other things. And if you can subscribe, please do so. All it does is to increase the reach of the show at the click of just one button. Wonderful.
Right. Okay. So we'll just go straight into the show. This is the way we usually do it now. Labour down, SNP up. It's difficult to believe that it's only 12 weeks, we calculated, since the general election. No one can deny that these weeks have been awful for Labour. Instead of coming out of the gate with optimism, propriety and acceptable changes for the majority of the electorate, the party has been mired in gloomy messaging. Freebies galore and dubious and self-harming policy making. And it's not as though Labour didn't have time to get things right. They were in opposition for many, many years. Surely someone might have said, when we win this, we'll come under a lot of scrutiny. Can we make sure that we get off to a good start? Now, perhaps someone should have said that. That guy's the one who gets kicked out the window. Anyway, this show, though, isn't the place to discuss the failings of Labour in general.
No.
There's plenty of places you can do that, but what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say how these failings affect Scotland and how they affect Scottish nationalism and the potential resurgence of that. Now, because we have, to use the word resurgence twice or three times in a few sentences, because we have up until now relied on a resurgent Labour to push back the SNP. And we relied on the fact that they at least were semi-competent. But what if they're not? David?
Indeed.
What's your impression been so far of this?
Well, I mean, the phrase I used earlier this week was, it has been the most inauspicious start imaginable for Labour. And I'm finding myself, I mean, normally, you know me, I'm gobby and I always talk out and speak out if I think somebody in politics is doing the wrong thing. But I'm reluctant to do it. I don't want to be criticising the Labour government every day, although they've given me so much opportunity to do so, because they're just gaff after gaff. Now, the last time I was on the show, which I think was, 4 weeks ago, I said then, my fear throughout the general election campaign was that Labour would, early on, make very unwise and unpopular choices at the outset of the parliamentary term. And we discussed it, and you, Mark D, said, well, the thing is, you can't expect Labour not to act like Labour. But the problem is, they haven't acted like a traditional Labour government so far. On the three main issues that have arisen. So just very quickly, the three main issues about which people are criticising them are, firstly, the Southport riots, and then what really looked like disproportionate sentences given out, disproportionately harsh sentences given out to people, and in very short order as well, especially when compared with other sentencing. Now, clearly, that's not all down to the government. Obviously, the judiciary is involved in. God, I nearly said the word judiciary there, didn't I? Anyway, so that's down to the judges as much as anything else. But we know that there's pressure being put on them by the government. So that's one. Secondly, scrapping fuel allowance for OEPs, and thirdly, repeated revelations of handouts and what looks like sleaze, and Labour government ministers being the recipients. And you look at those three things: law and order, cutting of benefits, particularly to old people, and taking favours from effectively lobbyists. That's Conservative stuff usually, not Labour. You wouldn't associate the Labour Party with any of those things. And plus, of course, Starmer and Rachel Reeves, the two top people, are so wooden in their delivery. They just sound terrible. There's no emphasis or no nuance to anything they say. Their voices jar. Starmer keeps making verbal gaffes. He was talking about releasing the sausages yesterday, for God's sake. And the other one was, should know better. Seriously, what is wrong with you, man? You're the Prime Minister. You can't even speak English. Dreadful.
Well, yes. I think, obviously, politicians are always going to have some type of gaffes here and there. I think, that comes on top of that. I mean, for example, Boris, who would have all these gaffes, and you'd be like, oh, well, that was Boris, right?
Boris,
but you expect, somehow I think people had a better expectation of this. Maybe more like, my feeling was it was perhaps like going to be a managerial class, right? Boring. A bit boring, really, but people who are intent and, almost like accountants running the country for a wee while. That kind of feeling, not your traditional Labour activists and all the social stuff that was going on. There's not been that much social, to be honest, so far. I mean, that'll probably come up later when you get a bit more bored. But Mark, I mean, is that your feeling of how you thought that they would come in? Or
I didn't really expect them to be as bad as what they've been so far, to be honest with you. The winter fuel allowance stopping that, I think that's a huge, huge mistake. It's even come out at the conference that they voted in favour of repealing that. I don't see how they cannot go back on that, because that is going to cost them at the local elections. It's going to cost them if they carry that on to the budget, and God knows what we're going to see at the budget. I think I just think they've been pretty shocking, and all the things that are coming out about Starmer and his £20,000 gift for his kid to go to study.
It's unbelievable, all that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's like, I mean, don't they know that all that's the first stuff that is going to come out?
100%.
I mean, he's not. It's not like he's wanting for cash. He's a millionaire in his own right, And these excuses seem very lame. It's like, oh, I need a space for my son to study. It's like, well, go to the library, but that hasn't been closed down yet. That type of thing. I mean, it's not that. If he's at university, he can go to the university library, right? I mean, it's straightforward.
Yep.
Oh no, is it GCSEs, whatever? Even you can go to school and study. I don't know. It just all seems very lame, and not very political, not very politically adept, I think. And this is perhaps part of that. Now, a significant question, though, I think, is though we might think that this is a disaster, but how do Labour activists, and they think about that? And I don't think that's going very well. But is their impression that, well, things can only get better as the song goes, or you just think this is just as early teething trouble? Mark,
I think they're as shocked as what we are from what they're seeing from Starmer in this government. I don't think they expected any of this, especially the winter fuel allowance. I think that is a huge issue. But I think they are shocked. But I think there has been this split between the Labour activists and the actual parliamentary Labour Party. I think there's a big difference between the two, and I think they are clashing. I think they clashed before the election, and I think they're clashing even more now that they're in government. So I think there's going to be some huge issues going forward with the unions and with the activists towards the parliamentary Labour Party, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I did read a post that actually brought it up, and they said that there actually have been some significant policies implemented, but they're hidden under all this other stuff that's going on. Right, now, there are two groups that we're concerned with, though, in this discussion. Tactical voters, people who might traditionally vote, say, Conservative, but voted Labour this time, and disillusioned nationalists who think the SNP are a disaster and there's no hope of getting independence. So let's have a look at this first. The tactical voters, right? What is about the impression people might have? So, say you're a tactical voter. I'm a tactical voter. I voted for Labour this time for tactical reasons. It's I think it's quite hard to. It's bad enough trying to vote for your own party when they don't do well, but when you're tactically voting for someone else, for another party you would naturally vote for, it's really quite even much harder when they don't do well. So, the feeling is, though. Mark, do you think it's unreasonable to say that Labour may well have lost the Conservative tactical voters that they had got this time?
Yeah, I do think there are going to be a lot of people that will be put off voting Labour again tactically. I think that will be put off, but I don't see them going back to the SNP. I do see that we are going to see another low turnout election after the general one. I think it's going to be, in 2026, I think it's going to be an extremely low turnout again. I think people are just looking around saying, who do I vote for? Yeah. Who can I trust?
It's a kind of dangerous situation in a way, because then people are very susceptible to glib talkers, let's talk about it that way, charmers, as it were, chancers even. Now, there was a poll. So this second group, though, is a larger group that voted, switched from SNP to Labour, and it's a bit more complicated now. A poll by Survation this week was commissioned by Angus Robertson's outfit, which is called Progress Scotland, said that Scottish Labour support has fallen by 9 percentage points. Now, I don't know, you can take this with a pinch of salt or a very large grain of salt, whatever, because of the source. But it's not undeniable that Labour would find people who'd supported Labour would be wavering at the moment anyway. Now, the poll also said that, so the level now with SNP in Scotland, and it said the constituency vote at Holyrood has the SNP on 32%, but Labour on 25%. And for the list, it's 30% and Labour on 25%. The initial figures were for the general election numbers, I think. So with all that in mind, David, you're an election expert and statistics expert. Would you think that what's going on?
Well, my view, and I think Angus Robertson, if you like, sums this up in terms of what I'm about to say here. It's almost a lazy and false conclusion to draw and it's being done so by Scottish journalists and commentators who frankly don't really understand elections and the likely outcomes. And we saw that in some of the predictions before this election. I mean, you remember the tactical voting guide pretty much got it all right, because the 48 seats that they won were all the ones predicted, and the 9 seats where the SNP came second, one and the chosen guy came second, they were all correct also. Meanwhile, you get guys like, what's his name, Stephen Daisley, whatever his name is, saying, oh yes, the Conservatives will win 15 seats the day before the election. Absolute rubbish. So journalists they don't really get it. So they're drawing these conclusions from stats like that. Surveillance, we know, isn't really trustworthy. Anyway,
it's not bad, not too bad though. It's not one of the big problematic ones.
Exactly, that's true. It's not indeed. But so the conclusion that's being drawn as well: Labour voters switched to SNP after the independence referendum in the light of Gulf War II, and then those SNP old Labour voters who were voting SNP then moved back to Labour on July the 4th. But they only did that to get rid of the Tories, you know, which is crap, as we know. And now that Labour are acting like Tories, those voters will jump back a third time and vote SNP again. No, they won't. I don't believe that at all. My hope is that pro-UK voters will remember that irrespective of how the Westminster government is performing, the priority in 2026 is to get this rotten, mendacious, appalling, dreadful SNP administration out of office. And you can see what you like about taking away fuel allowance. That still remains the priority. It does.
Well, I think that's certainly the priority for us as tactical voters, right? So we say, right, you know, we always knew it was going to be painful. I mean, this is an extra level of pain, but it's still going to be painful. So you're going to, if you have to go through this type of pain in 2026 to give them a death blow, well, fine, whatever it is, you know, going to take a few hits for the team. That's the way it goes, and it's no indication of whether Labour is doing well or poorly. It doesn't matter. The objective is to beat the SNP. But the issue I think here is on these people who are the Labour, the ex-SNP. Can they go back? Exactly. Now, what would they be going back to? They're going back to better governance under the SNP, going back to propriety when they have Michael Matheson and the COVID late Maggie and all that type of stuff. You know that and. They're trying to say now, this is the latest trope, is that that 30% of those who went over to Labour still support independence. Well, you know, if I support independence, I'm not. Why would I vote for a party that doesn't want independence at all? It doesn't make any sense at all. People, it's like Santa Claus. People like we want to believe that exists, but we all know he doesn't really exist. It's that kind of. That kind of thing with Mary in the background there, somewhat shocked. And then, of course, this whole idea is that this is a dead end. Can the SNP escape the idea that their whole raison d'etre is a dead end?
I don't see Labour supporters going back, and I didn't realise. I don't think I saw in the figures that there was this sway of SNP supporters suddenly voting Labour. I think SNP supporters sat on their hands and said, well, I'm not going to vote in the general election. And I think that's why Labour because Labour really got the same kind of figures they were getting. It's just the SNP vote collapsed because people just would not vote for them. I think they are done. And the simple reason they are done is because independent supporters don't trust them anymore to get independence or to get a referendum. So they will not vote SNP at all. So I think this idea that they're sitting back saying, well, we'll just wait for them. Labour's going to make such a mess. We'll wait for them to come back to us. That's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. I think they're just going to sit on their hands and say, I am not supporting Labour, but I'm not going to vote Labour, but I will not vote SNP either because they've wasted my vote for 17, 18 years. And they've never got us any closer to independence.
I think you have to look at the psychology of going back, right? So people, you would have to say actually that the line should be all these SNP voters tactically voted Labour to get rid of the Tories, right? But the Tories were a disaster anyway, so I don't know how much that argument actually works. And then somehow, but they're actually still SNP people. But as you've said, Mark, what's to vote for? There's nothing. There's 17 years of incompetence, blah blah blah, and so on. So this idea that they would go back, but I do wonder we're in this wishful thinking. You know, we have to be very careful to analyse and say, is this what we want to happen, or is this what is more likely to happen?
My only worry is if it's an extremely low turnout, will that help the SNP, even with a smaller majority than what they've got now? Will it still help them? What do you think it'll help them? Help if it was an extremely low turnout, David? Do you think that'll help them?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but the numbers, the likely outcome of the 2026 election is going to have a very different view from now. Let's not forget, as things stand, the SNP has 62 of 73 constituency seats. Now, they're not going to win 62 seats next time. You'd need at least 40% of the vote to get that, and they haven't got 40% of the vote. That's not going to happen unless, and we'll have to talk about this shortly, unless the pro-UK voting constituencies is altered significantly by the presence of a fourth party, and that will come on to.
Yes, we'll discuss that in the next section. This would seem to be a good enough time to take a break. We will take a short break here, and we'll come back, and we're going to talk about a potential alliance between the SNP and Labour in 2026. So we'll see you in a second. Right, so the talk round steamy is win the 2020 Hollywood election. Will David maybe have to comment on that? So that they'll have to make an alliance. Well, you know, this is the way it is at the moment. We don't know if it's going to happen in 2 years. We don't even know if the election is going to be before then. Anyway, right? So just the first thing, of course, it's going to be impossible for Labour to make an alliance with the Tories. So just get that out of your mind straight away. It's never going to happen. But will they, if pushed, or maybe if not pushed, make an alliance with the SNP? This on Monday, our favourite journalist, Neil, I'm not a nationalist, Mackay, touted this idea in the Herald. Let me get there. Oh, yeah, yes. There we go. Let's have a Labour SNP coalition with rotating First Ministers. It says that. Rotating First Minister sounds a bit of a weird thing, but anyway, nonetheless. Biddling around. He says, and also Stuart MacDonald, former SNP defence spokesman, it says in here, LOL, also proposed it, saying it would be a breath of fresh air. Mackay, though, going back to him, said, wouldn't this serve us all? Shouldn't unionists and nationalists be able to cooperate? Wouldn't they benefit from a taste of humility? Wouldn't it be joyous if they had to hang up their petty obsessions and actually govern in our interests rather in their self-interest or the interest of their ideology? Well, the problem with, of course, this happy-clappy nonsense is that nationalists don't cooperate because they serve a higher God. Everything must be calculated with one aim in mind. Will this advance the cause of independence? So therefore, if they agree, it must advance the cause of independence.
Yeah.
That's my logic. David, what do you think of that?
Agreed. I think the idea of an SNP Labour coalition is total fantasy. It won't happen. Labour will certainly, they will make it clear, Sauer, I think already has done, that they will not enter into a coalition with SNP under any circumstances. I think they will actually spell that out. I don't believe any party has got any consideration of going into a coalition with the SNP for the reasons you've just outlined. It's a waste of time. It's like Israel and Hamas going into coalition. It's not going to happen. Not a chance. It's not going to happen.
Well, there is, though. The thing is that they are centre right, centre left. Sorry, not centre left. They are on the left.
Yes.
Right now, the SNP are trying to position themselves as being more left
right.
than Labour, which is a bit hard to believe when then you've got Kate Forbes is more right than Hamas almost maybe So what I mean, this is the kind of thing. We've got a party, the SNP, that have been brought together. They're not ideologically sound, right?
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
So they've got one note party, right? The policies are all over the place, up for auction to the Greens, basically. So, I mean, what's Labour got to gain from this thing? Because they could just form a minority government with Lib Dems, maybe even.
Quite. I mean, remember, the big thing to remember here is Labour has just, for the first time since, God, what year was it? 2007. 2010 was the last time that Labour had won more seats in Westminster than the SNP. So it's been 14 years they've been waiting to do that. They're certainly not going to hand the initiative back to them and say, okay, I tell you what, let's work together. They're desperate to get the SNP out. Sauer wants to be First Minister. There's no question about that. I saw another suggestion floated about a possible alliance, which was a progressive left of centre, Labour, Lib Dem and Green coalition, which is possible. That's more likely than it. I wouldn't like it, but it's possible.
Well, the Greens are. I mean, the Greens are. Oh, they're up for auction to anyone.
Exactly.
Anyway, you know,
anybody. That's quite right. But I mean, remember. I forgot what I was going to say there. Yeah, progressive. I don't know about that at all. But the numbers are very interesting in the Holyrood election. You've effectively got to get 65 seats to get to form a majority. You have, because there are 129 seats. 65 is a big number. There's only been an outright majority one time. So every government since then has been either a minority government or a coalition. So the idea of Labour winning it, as in winning 65 seats, that's not going to happen. They will not get 65. No chance. But they might.
Unless, well, I mean, you never know. But it's unlikely, right?
Okay. Yeah, true. But even look at those numbers. One thing to consider about elections is it's not a huge consideration, but it's material in a way. The Labour vote is more focused, as is the Conservative vote in Scotland, than the SNP vote, because the SNP wins or comes second everywhere. That's what they do, pretty much. They've done that for the last two elections. Now, Labour doesn't come second in a lot of places, and Conservatives...
Oh, yes, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So even if Labour's on the same number of points in a constituency poll as the SNP, that means Labour will win more seats. They absolutely will do, because the SNP vote is more widely dispersed. So that's something to consider. But it's fascinating to speculate about what might happen next year. We need to very soon come on to the gorilla on the sofa here, which is reform.
Yeah, well, just before we get to there, I mean, surely an alliance is possible with the Greens if Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater get kicked out and they repudiate their nationalist stance. The only nationalist Greens in the entire world. Of course, Greenism being, of course, an international movement, not a national movement. It's bizarre. So, I mean, obviously, Patrick Harvey and the other one, Lupe Lorna, they hitched their wagon to the SNP to get power.
Yes,
but they would, if and they're already under pressure from the leadership, from the members anyway, because the membership don't necessarily want to be tied to the SNP. So, is it possible with the change of them, then they could easily be a different type of Green Party, not necessarily one that we would like, but at least it wouldn't be a nationalist Green Party. Is that a possibility? You see that?
Well, the problem you got, there's a third one, of course. Ross Greer is as nationalist as those two are.
Oh, yes.
The problem with the Greens is, what did they get last time? 12. I can't remember what the percentage was, but they got eight seats. Now, it's very difficult for a party which is in possession of some list seats to lose them all together, because parties do get votes in the list. That's the problem. It doesn't take that big a percentage for a party like the Greens to get a seat. If you get 6% of the vote, you're going to get a seat. If you get 8 to 10% of the vote, you're going to get 4 or 5 seats, and that's what happens. I think 12% they got an 8 seat. So unfortunately, I hate to say it, we're very likely to see Harvey, Slater, and Greer all coming back. Probably, I can't remember the names of the others, and they
Chapman.
Yeah. So it's going to be difficult to get them out unless there's a significant fall in their vote, or unless, for example, the SNP wins comparatively few constituency seats and is more reliant on the list. That could knock the Greens out. So I don't think they'll get as many as 8 seats next time, but they're probably likely still to get 4 or 5.
Okay. Right. Well, that's about a reality check there, so that's fine. That's what you're here for. Okay. Now, question Mark can take on this, a bit of this, I think. A friend wrote about reform. And can it seriously win in Scotland in 2026? Yesterday, I was called a Labour stooge by a reform supporter in a comment on the Times website, which I have to say is a first. But this fellow was upset that I called out and continued to call out reform's leadership and candidates who continue to support second referendum. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said about David Kirkwood, the party's deputy chairman, who we all saw the video of him saying that he would vote yes again. He did vote yes. Fair enough, you'd voted yes, and then you say, I won't vote yes again. But he said he would vote yes again. Not a single statement from him saying that he has repudiated that view. I seem to be saying repudiated a lot today. But anyway, he didn't say it. So this is a question anyway. But nonetheless, irrespective of that, are reform a spoiler in this 2026 election, Mark?
Yes and no. Yes, because you can't deny that the popularity is growing. It's growing all over the country. It seems to be. Their conference was huge. Was packed out. But I still think 2026 is so far away. I don't think reform will be a big issue in my book, unless they came to Scotland and sorted all this independence people out. Because there's not only that Kirkwood as well. We found six others that were campaigning to be an MP in Scotland who were nationalists, who wanted independence, 6 of them, and they've done nothing but lie about what they were going to do. I asked them, they put up a tweet saying after the election, saying that all this was nonsense. It was made up by opposition and people that don't like reform. They all made this up. It's not true. I pulled them up in the space about it, and one of the campaigners contacted Reform head office, and they deleted the tweet and said they are going to sort this out. But
really?
Nothing's happened. Yeah, that's what they told us in a Twitter space that we were hosting. They didn't do anything. It was a lie. They didn't do anything. These people are still in power. They're still here. I think they won't be as important as people are thinking, because by 2026, I don't think Reform are going to be a serious party in the next election. I really don't. I think they might not even be around come the next election. They will be in 2026. I have no doubt about that. But come the next general election, I don't think they'll be around. I think Farage will be off. He's already having arguments, internal arguments, and they're making things, pretty evident. It's his way or the highway. He runs the party, and he's going to run the party.
They seem to be quite surprisingly quiet on Scotland as the national party. Was there any? And you talk about that Reform conference. Was there any big speakers from Scotland there?
He doesn't care
about it.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Scotland.
Thing. And I'm not saying that we're Scottish. We need to be represented because we're not, because we are so proud people and all that nonsense. But it's supposed to be a UK party, and we haven't heard anything from them about the constitutional issue really, other than these assorted crumbs of losers that are around. And you're just like, well, this isn't the way to perform yourself. You need to professionalise the party.
There was no vetting.
Able to do that.
There was no vetting done whatsoever. I think Craig had found out how much they spent on vetting, and it was next to nothing, absolutely next to nothing that they paid this company to vet the candidates. All Nigel Farage wanted was a body to represent and take votes, because he wasn't bothered about having MPs from Scotland go to Westminster. All he was bothered about is having numbers. And the more people that voted Reform, the more he could turn around and say, we need to change the system because we got this amount of votes throughout the whole country. He wasn't bothered about winning MPs. He just wanted numbers. For him to do that, he needed a person in every constituency. And to do that, he didn't care who it was.
Right.
And what their beliefs was or what they wanted. He just wanted a body. And that's what we got in Scotland.
I think his personality is a big driver of the thing. I mean, I think he's an impressive force in UK politics. But is it directed for our purposes? It's not being directed very well. I think this is the thing here.
It's for his ego.
Well, perhaps that, but also we have to consider that the Conservative Party itself is going to go through some kind of reformation. Perhaps, if with any luck.
They may even do a deal, Mark.
Well, they might do that. That's the question. I mean, do you think they would do a deal with the Conservatives? I don't really think so. But
it really depends how the landscape looks. They certainly won't do a deal in time for 2026. I mean, my view of Reform, similar really, guys. They'll play a big role in the list in 2026, assuming they are still going. They could be a flash in the pan, but I suspect not. I mean, I agree with Mark and Ziggy entirely, in as much as they just put names in there in order to get onto the certain platforms. Like, for example, All for Unity. We knew that if we had a full quota of 56 regional candidates, we would get a party political broadcast. And it's that kind of thing that prompts people to take action. That's the case. So we picked some guys who really were. They were just making up, pulling anybody we could at the last minute. I imagine Reform was the very same. Looking at it, I just checked the figures there. The Greens took 8.12% of the vote in the list in 2021. That got them 8 seats. So
Right.
believe it, they really could. If they keep polling at whatever the hell they're polling at right now in Scotland, be it 9-10% or whatever, that's kind of that. They will win seats for sure.
Yeah, what are they going to do with these seats? This is the question.
This
is actually the question.
Right.
You know,
yeah, that's quite true. Remember, the list, as I've said, will be a big bun fight in 2026. The only reason that the SNP has got so few list MSPs is because they've got so many constituency MSPs, and it's an equation that goes like that: as one falls, the other rises, and vice versa. So they will have more list MSPs. The Conservatives, they'll probably lose some list MSPs because their vote share will fall. Reform and Labour will both see vote share increases. There's no question about it, because Reform will get for the first time. But that's the list. And the constituencies, though, Reform a dead loss. Forget it. They will not Reform. Cannot win a constituency in Scotland. Now, you see all these people saying, I'm not voting Labour again. That's when we're going to have to sell this idea of tactical voting. And a number of people...
it's going to be hard.
Very much.
It's necessary.
It is necessary. And then that's what I will do. I won't talk about it too much tonight, but it probably makes sense for me to go through the numbers as a
yes. Well, I think there will be war between Conservatives and Reform, because they know that the Conservatives are going to be, it's not just that the Conservatives will lose, it's that the SNP will get in. Because of it. And we saw, as I think it was Catherine put up the comment there, we saw how that happened in the North East and in Reform, in two or three Conservative, two or three SNP people in place of Conservatives, and I think one Labour as well. That's the message there. So we have to be wary. Our objective is to destroy the SNP. We can't destroy the SNP with Reform not getting in the mix. And then what? Then what are they going to do? What's the policies? What are they actually going to do for us in Scotland?
Yeah. I mean, it's all going to do immigration, as we know. And there's one of the comments here saying, look, the Labour vote in Scotland is down already and Conservative vote's up. Yes, that's true. It is. That's because Labour's come in with some very hard-hitting, front-loading the bad news, because they looked at the 2029 election. One guy on Twitter today said, oh, well, we've got until 2029 to decide how much of a Four Starmer is. No, you don't, pal. You've got 18 or 20 months until your fella, Starmer's guy up here, is trying very hard to be the First Minister. You haven't got 5 years at all. So you can be very, very careful.
No, and of course, I think he's at... Oh, go ahead, David.
I was going to say, remember, the numbers you're talking, the Conservative vote was down at 12% in Scotland. It should be bloody up, because that's the worst ever. So, well,
there is that. And I mean, of course, the election is on right now, and with any luck, Russell Finlay will win that. And I think he's quite a good force for restoring the Conservative Party. He seems very, very credible, and he looks like he looks and talks the part. And I think he can do a lot to restore the Conservative Party's fortunes in Scotland. What we will see, alternatively, if Murdo Fraser is elected, well, you can say goodbye to the Tories in Scotland.
Well, Mystic DG, I will tell you right now, guys, it is not even up for discussion. Russell Finlay will win, and will win handsomely. And the vote on Friday. It's announced on Friday this week.
Oh, it's okay. So.
Yeah, so we can talk about this next week. But no, I'm sure you're right. Murdo's not going to win it. Megan Gallagher's not going to win it. So that kind of narrows it down a bit, doesn't it? There you go.
Right. Okay. Right. As the Chinese say, may we live in interesting times. So, as we say, one thing we must be all clear on is that Scottish nationalism must never return. As we say, it's not going to be easy. We'll continue to support tactical voting. David will do that, and we'll watch to see who is the strongest parties in the Constitution. Now, let's just put them in. It's clear. If Reform was super strong in the Constitution, well, we'd be fine with it, but they're not. So no. We can't give airtime to people like that. Now, David's going to be up next. He's going to be talking about Indy 10th anniversary, which we touched a little bit on last week, but you've got some extra insights.
A little
in a second. Right, before you get started, if you want to do a donation message, right, please donate to the majority. We need your support. Thank you to everyone who's donated so far. It's great, keeps the show going, keeps us happy, and gets us ready for 2026. There's a lot coming up, and it'd be great to do more. So we can get more funds in, we can do more. Anyway, please donate on our website, or if you're watching the show, you can put in a super sticker or super thanks. Anyway, every donation appreciated. Small. You can also, I'll get to messaging at once. You can also buy a T-shirt. Look at this. Support the majority with these fantastic T-shirts and gears and mugs, all kinds of stuff. And a little bit of that comes through to help the show. A little bit of the profit, not as much, but anyway, still helps us. Anyway, so all right, David, now you're up.
Indeed. Okay, right. So yeah, hopefully I'm not going over too much of the stuff that was covered last week. There's a couple of things have been said in the week since, so hopefully not. What we've all seen in the run-up to and in the immediate aftermath of last week's 10th anniversary of the 2014 independence referendum, we have indeed seen some concerted efforts to breathe life into the moribund, as I called it, independence campaign. We saw Stephen Flynn saying, oh yes, nationalists and unionists must work together to agree a roadmap to a second independence referendum. I think the expression is, aye, watch me.
Is that like a bargaining? This is the bargaining stage, right?
Quite exactly.
Of there's different stages of grief.
That's it, that's it. Denial, anger, bargaining. That's it. So we're on bargaining now. The next one is depression, and then acceptance. Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, we can get to depression. That'd be good.
That'll be nice. Yeah, indeed. And of course, we saw Swinney in a speech last week signalling a change in direction. And more of that in my Zoomer section. I'll tell you more a little bit of that. We've seen Sturgeon bleating that, well, of course, I won all the elections I fought, and it's only that when I stepped down that we didn't win elections. You're like, right, okay, Nippy, that's great. Today, of course, we saw Kenny Fark, good old Kenny Farkas. And you can also like...
Oh, yeah, see, I saw that.
I loves it.
I'll find that one.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So he's calling for John Swinney. He thinks John Swinney is going to be the architect of a move to codify in law the terms under which a referendum on Scottish independence might be held in the future.
Well, it's a Clarity Act, otherwise.
It's pretty much exactly. Now, we know Kenny's got a history of trying to prolong and trying to authenticate, if you like, the whole idea of independence and the whole debate, when it's obvious there's nothing further to be discussed, certainly not now. And let's just remember, guys, 80 days ago, pro-independence parties in Scotland took 34% of the vote in the general election. Why, in the name of God, is anybody talking about a referendum on those figures? It just makes no sense to me. Mark D, what do you think is behind these ridiculous attempts again?
Well, I think that's what it comes down to, is bargaining. Is, you know, this is the stages of grief, and basically they've got this. We went through this denial phase. And now they're kind of come to terms with it. So you see so many, like that Neil Mackay article, Labour and SNP should form a coalition, or this Farquharson one, you know, they should do a Clarity Act. Well, actually the Clarity Act was something that was proposed on our side for a while, and I rejected it actually, because why should you give them targets? You know, and I think we have to get free from this idea that, you know, that there is a target for that the breakup of our country is up for a target. Great. It's like, okay, and so what are you going to rely on? Angus Robertson's polls? Yeah. You know, I mean, I don't think so. Not at all. And other countries just don't do this type of nonsense. Anyway, but let's go back to the thing. So I think they are this idea that they're looking for ways to make nationalism continue, because it's not got anything. It has to join with Labour, or that somehow they're all going to put all these concessions in. But all I'm reminded of is the story of the scorpion and the frog, right? Or the parasites. Whatever. It's just you're attaching a parasite to yourself by trying to work with these people. As I said earlier, their only aim is if you start thinking. Their only aim is, does this political act, get me closer to independence? Yeah. So if they work with you, then it must. Right? So why would you work with them in that case?
Why indeed? Indeed. So, my view, much broadly in line with what you're saying, this is just further evidence of the continued existence, of the attempt to continue the existence of the independence industry in Scotland, other than the independence campaign. We know that SNP and Conservatives would love to carry on with their Punch and Judy Act forever. Vote SNP and we'll get independence. Vote Conservative, we don't want independence. Nobody cares about that crap anymore. Every time the Conservative Party stood in Scotland, you got Douglas Ross saying, vote for us.
Oh, God.
Yeah, right, okay, brilliant. Defeat the SNP, right, fantastic, great, Douglas, brilliant, that's where you've gone. Anyway, so now we've seen the Scottish electorate has just firmly rejected both parties. No one cares about Colin Mackay and Bernard Ponsonby saying, what are the implications of this speech Keir Starmer's just made on Scottish? Just stop. And frankly, to be more controversial, nobody cares about John Curtis with his, well, of course, Brexit has made it much more.
Yes, I know. I think it's all part, as you say, David. It's all part of the industry. He's part of it as well, and they're all bigging up. I mean, well, you complained before, about the Times, particularly, but always looking for this better nationalism that doesn't exist. It's like, put it to bed. We've tried. We've 17 years of it. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Not going to happen.
Doesn't work. Move on. Mark, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, these people are just desperate. They see that gravy train stopping, and they see they're having to get off it, and they see that in 2026, and they can see that the gravy train's going to end. They see the stop sign, so they're desperate for it to carry on to 2030 in 2030 and carry it on that far and keep the money rolling in, because most of these people will not be able to earn a good living if they're not on that gravy train.
No,
so they are desperate.
That's the truth. Testify. That is definitely the truth here. Yeah, it is. I think this is it. It's a desperate industry in crisis, I suppose. David, do you want to finish off then? What would we say on it?
No, just to say exactly that, as Mark said, we know that this is coming to an end simply because you can't keep paying people in Scotland to achieve nothing, and that's what we have been doing for a long time. The independence industry is very real. A lot of journalists make a lot of money out of it. This is why they keep writing about it. The sensible ones will say, okay, it's not going to happen. But the ones who just want to keep it going are the ones like Kenny Farquharson and like all the guys you see on Scotland Tonight who sit in the panel. I saw one from Holyrood Sources today. Honestly, the lineup you wouldn't believe. It was the guy Stephen Noon, is it, and Kes Dugdale and Jet.
Did you see that? Actually, I wanted to mention that. Did you see that today? There was this thing.
Yeah.
This Kezia Dugdale basically it's doing the same thing. It said there should be some special Secretary of State. There should be basically again a Clarity Act, right? And you say where targets should be made if a certain amount of polling happens, and they always go just like Northern Ireland.
Exactly, a border poll. Can we just remember that's to stop a civil war continuing, because that's what happened in Ireland. So the reason they have a border poll is because part of the country broke away from the United Kingdom and part stayed. And we can't even have a border between the two, otherwise mass murderers will start killing people again.
Well, that was the supposed fear, whether that's the case or not. But basically, the problem, I think, to some extent, is weak UK politicians who think that they can slice off parts of their country like salami.
Yeah,
it's like no other country thinks this way.
Exactly right.
It doesn't work this way. You just don't. You go to France and people were like, well, Mark said it last week about the Catalans. They put the people in jail, for running an illegal referendum. Right. Okay. Mark is going to be up next, and we're going to be talking about homelessness. Well, so we'll see you in a second. Before we get onto that, Mark, sorry to catch you there. I think this is going to end this independence industry. I mean, surely at some point Kenny Farquharson's going to get bored. Is it?
I personally wouldn't pay him to write another of those articles. I mean, what are they achieving? It's just nonsense. I mean, I think in 2026 there will be a little bit of a shake-up in terms of everybody who's been working on this, like the civil servants who gave a crib sheet to say how marvellous Michael Matheson was. And these are supposedly independent, neutral civil servants, basically trying to help an SNP MSP keep his job after he stole money. I mean, it's an absolute joke. I think there will be a big reset, and I think a lot of people, civil servants, the Sir Humphreys and all those guys will stop all the spoon feeding and the help of the independence campaign which they're carrying out at the moment. I think that will happen for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good line. It's like Holyrood needs a reset. Now we say it needs the biggest reset of all, which is to abolish, get rid of the whole thing entirely. We shouldn't even have these discussions. But if we are to have it, at least we could have a reset. Now, Mark, sorry to get in the way of your segment.
It's important points. The homeless, new figures have come out about the homeless situation, and it's dire. It's getting to serious levels now. It's the highest level for more than a decade. The new figures are, and I've got the figures in front of me, 23 to 24, 40,685 homeless applications were made. That's 4% increase on last year, and it's the highest since 11 and 12. Of March 24, 31,870 live applicants were made. That's the highest on record that we've ever seen, and that's 15,474 children were made homeless. Children in temporary accommodation, 10,110. That's up 5%. From 9,595. Shelter Scotland's director, Alison Watson, has said it's clearly children that are paying the highest price for politicians' failure. The housing emergency is a national shame. Now, the housing minister, Paul McLennan, he's made a statement about it. And he says, figures are deeply concerning. Well, no shit, come on. Jesus,
Right.
Of course they are. Of course they're concerning. Excuse my language. He says, I know the lack of settled homes seriously affects people's health and life chances. That's all they had to say about it. And then he says that they are working hard, very hard, to rectify this situation with his partners. That's what he says.
Who are these partners? That's what I want to know, actually.
He says that, and then they've dropped the housing budget by 200 million.
Mhm.
So how is that going to help the situation?
What are if you don't mind me asking, Mark or David, either one can answer. What do you think are the main causes driving this homelessness?
It's because they're not building enough social houses.
Absolutely
They are 17% of the whole sector, not just the private sector and the social sector. The 17,000 down, 17%, down on in 23-24 on building homes.
Yep.
They were promised 110 affordable homes by 2032. Well, and 70% of them were meant to be social housing, and so far there's only just over 5,000 social homes being built. That's the issue. There's not enough houses being built, social housing, affordable housing being built in Scotland. And the rental, and David knows more than I do about the rental situation in Scotland. So I'll let him.
Yeah, indeed, Mark, you're right. Private rents, as many of you will know, I'm a private landlord. I have a number of properties in which I have a share, and we rent them out at very, very, very low cost to people through the west of Scotland. Not loads, about 10 in total, but you see it all the time. Councils make it very difficult because they like to control who's going into accommodation. They don't really like working hand in hand with the private sector. We know that the Scottish Government, particularly the Greens, resent anyone in Scotland making any money privately, particularly at house, but they don't build any houses. So you've got the same situation. I'll describe this as a classic situation for you. There's a property we have in Ayr. We have two properties, in fact, in a block of 6. 2 of the properties are empty. One of them has been empty for about 5 years. The landlord doesn't answer any questions. The other week, it started leaking from the roof into his property and down into the property below, not mine, but somebody else's. There's nothing you can do. You're not even permitted to break into the property to fix it. What you have to do is, if you can magic up a reason for the electricity board to come and take action, then the fire brigade will come and knock down the door for you, and then the electricity board will come in. This is how farcical it is. There are properties all over Scotland where landlords are sitting with assets which have diminished in value since 2008, still aren't worth anything, so they won't sell them. They don't really want the hassle of renting them out, so they just do nothing with them. Meanwhile, you've got a growing list of people looking for a home. That's how you get homelessness, guys. And it's the person in Scotland probably most responsible for the dire state of the private rental sector is Ross Greer, because all he's ever done is rubbish landlords and glorify tenants. And what's one of the other policies. Angela Reno's already announced ending no-fault evictions. Brilliant. So putting more emphasis on tenants and saying, yeah, you keep them here. It's an absolute joke. We know that the Scottish Government resents private enterprise in every sector. They certainly resent it in housing. And that's why when you get an absolute clown like Paul McClellan, who should never have been an MSP, as the housing minister, believe me, guys, you're not going to see a solution to this.
£110,000 a year being paid for that, and the best he can say is that he's working with some partners to do it. I mean, it's like absolutely terrible here. So I'm trying to find a thing here. He says they demonstrate the scale of the challenge we face in tackling the housing emergency. Well, but you knew there's the housing problem for years, known for years. And I'm determined to work with partners to reverse this trend. What do you mean determined to work with them? It's not even I am working with.
And then they've cut 200 million off the housing budget. It doesn't make sense. The other issue.
All they say to that, of course, is, that's because the capital grant from Westminster was cut. So it's all their fault. Yeah, we all buy that, mate. Yeah, well done.
The other issue is immigration. It's putting so much pressure on our infrastructure, the levels of immigration, that it's having an effect on the housing stock and who's getting the houses, who's on the list for the houses, and I think it affects the young. From the statistics, it affects the young people more than any other population. Is the young that are missing out. They're having to live with the parents for a lot longer than this. They can't afford a house. It's
it's difficult. Our kids are out trying to find apartments right now, and it's quite a challenging marketplace. In fact, one of the places asking for a guarantor for rent is something I never heard of before. Maybe it's a new thing. Maybe it's an old thing. Sorry, but stuff like that. Like all these restrictions and so on because of the situation. Anyway, good segment there. Mark, well done, and good input there from David as a evil landlord, helping out to tell us what's actually going on. Actually, I think Ross Greer is pretty much an evil person for doing this, trying to destroy entire industries without any consultation based on ideological grounds. Exactly. It's really not right. Now, things you can do right now to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. Oh, look, beautiful. There it is. It's right there. And these are flying off the shelves. You can also, of course, subscribe to the show on YouTube, which we like a lot. But if you like liking, then like the show. It's as good. The thing we like most is likes. Yeah. Okay. And of course, you can also tell your friends about us, and you can do all of the above, which makes us extremely happy and fulfilled, underlined exclamation mark. Now, coming up, it's the moment you have all been waiting for. It is the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the week. Mary, you going to be here with you?
Yay!
Right, okay. Very good. All right. Okay. Right, okay, so my Zoomer of the week is Gillian, who is the Scottish Government's acting net zero and energy secretary. Wow, that pompous title allowed her to go on a jolly to New York Climate Week. Not even like USA, COP29 or whatever it's going to be, but New York Climate Week. Martin says, I'm attending the upcoming New York Climate Week to represent Scotland on the global stage and take part in meaningful discussions about the future of our planet. As a devolved country, I'm surprised I should say that. As a devolved country, there is a key influential role Scotland can play internationally in the global transition to net zero and climate resilient future in a way that is fair and just for all. I wish we talked this just transition. Absolutely nonsense. Of course, if she really wanted to help the climate by her own rules, she should have stayed at home and participated on Zoom. But what's a few thousand in travel expenses to an acting net zero and energy secretary? Meanwhile, due to her net zero policies, the oil and gas industry is getting hammered, jobs being lost. Of course, while China are still adding coal-fired power stations by the minute. And, of course, playing the other side of the coin, which is to supply the rest of the gullible West with green products. Green products. They make them all. while they're doing all the pollution. It's a good deal for them, not necessarily for the rest of us. Reminder that Scotland is still, the UK is responsible for 1% of global emissions. And Scotland, of course, being a tenth of that, 0.1% of emissions, global emissions. But meanwhile, China, of course, as previously mentioned, responsible for 30%. Our emissions are a rounding error on China's. Why is she going to China? Or at least standing outside the Chinese embassy saying no more coal-fired power stations, please.
Absolutely.
But that's not where they go. She's off on a jolly to, excuse me, my eyes, we were thinking, off on a jolly to New York, of course. I mean, I bet if it was like the, Reno Climate Week, she'd be like, no, I'm not too bothered with that.
Yeah.
No offense to the people who are watching the show from Reno. Okay. Anyway.
Reno, Nevada. Yep.
Of course. So we all have to suffer because and they talk about the winter fuel allowance and all that. If electricity bills were lower because we didn't have all these green subsidies, then maybe people wouldn't be so bothered.
Yeah.
Or for the fact that Ed Miliband doesn't want to build new nuclear power stations. I put the Green Zealots that are in the SNP and in Labour and in the Tory party all together in this as well. They're just fully signed up to this trash religion of climate change, and they lumber us all with higher energy costs while they jet off. I mean, it's so hypocritical. We talk about Leonardo DiCaprio and he's jetting off to a conference on climate change. That's exactly what this moron does. Zoomer does. So she's not actually Zoomer. She's still zoomed.
Yes.
Anyway, and then they write articles in the paper justifying themselves. I mean, she actually wrote an article in the paper why I'm attending New York Climate Week, and you know what she's actually doing when she's there? She's going to talk about Malawi, climate change in Malawi.
Okay.
Anyway,
right.
So anyway, I can't wait till these net zero grifters. Wait till net zero.
Yeah.
And these net zero grifters like Gillian Martin are given the boot.
Here.
Anyway. What kind of thing is that? Flying out to New York for climate change? Absolutely.
Really, it's just farcical. I remember that photograph of Angus Robertson with Kelly Given standing in New York. What the hell are they? What's Kelly Given going to add to any issue going on in world affairs and having to fly to New York to do it? Let's not kid ourselves on this.
Yeah, and it says in this article here that when Hamza Yousaf went in 2023, they're out £70,000 it cost. £70,000 it costs. What do we get? What do we get from it? Higher bills. It's at the best.
Yeah.
You get higher bills. All right. Okay, night, David. You're going to be up for your Zoomer. We're back in a second. Right, there you go.
So my Zoomer this week is Honest John Swinney. Now, the reason being, in a speech last week, Honest signalled a change in direction on independence, which we've kind of talked about already. And it was compelling, what's the other word he said? A demonstrable backing for independence that won't happen. And of course, he had referenced the 1997 devolution referendum, in which he said that vote was only held because there were sustained polling that showed it was a settled will of the Scottish people, fine, blah, 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 all that stuff. Now, that doesn't sound too crazy, I agree. He's saying, okay, well, we can't do it now. He's at least acknowledging the fact that he was just showing his rear end in the so good. So it sounds like he's even being pragmatic until you remember the general election campaign this year. Now, what did we hear again and again from John Swinney throughout? We have a mandate from the Scottish people who voted in 2021 for an SNP government standing on a manifesto pledge to hold a second in the referendum. So why are we having democracy tonight? Now, as Fiona Bruce very neatly pointed out, she said, that's fine, but this is 2024 now, and you're standing in another election. So if you don't get a majority of seats in this election, and a pro-UK party does, that means they have a mandate standing on a manifesto pledge to keep the United Kingdom together, to do exactly that and to keep the United Kingdom together. So you've got to acknowledge that. Oh, no, I want to take the independence to the next stage and to get the Scottish people voting SNP. Load of absolute rubbish. Couldn't answer the point at all. So when is a mandate not a mandate? Obviously, when the SNP don't win the election. And he's still going on talking about it. He actually said 10 days ago it's only a matter of time until Scotland's independence. And let's not forget, he also said until Ireland is reunited. He said John Swinney is the first minister who will lead Scotland to independence.
It's like I said last week that they really should just, they would have more respect if they just said, look, the game's a bogey. Yep. That's it. But they just continue with this as it's like they're going circling the drain.
Yep.
Going, independence, that's what it's like. Just it's come on. It's just they've gone down with the ship, I suppose.
Exactly.
That's all we can say.
Quite. Now, all I can say to John Swinney is, Effie Dean said the other day, for John Swinney to be the first minister to lead Scotland to independence, they would have to wait at least 5 years to another election, and then another 5 years at least for another referendum and to get it done. So he's going to be he's going to be the first minister when he's 72, is he? Yeah, I don't think so. Let's face it, John. You've got at the most 20 months left in the job. You're going to lead Scotland to independence in that time. Bring it on, baby. Have at it, please. So it's for his continued refusal to accept the fact that independence is stone cold dead. Swinney, you're my Zoomer, baby.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it. It's the same thing, though, for Salmond, isn't it? If you put those numbers on the Salmond, right? Salmond is 72. If he was to, it'd be 10 years, you say. So he'd be 82. Wow, judging by the state of him, his corpulence, I don't think he maybe last that long. I mean, it's fair enough to say he doesn't look that healthy, does he? Anyway.
No, he doesn't. No, not at all.
No. So, too much limoncello. Or that's whatever. Anyway, moving on. Mark, it's going to be you next. Okay. Here we go. It better be good.
Right.
Okay,
well, normally I like to do a little bit of a jokey one, but this one is I think it's a serious one, and it's something that I find astonishing. My vote's going to go to Sandy Brindley, the CEO of Rape Crisis. Now, we know what's gone on with the scandal and the bloke Marindle whatever it's however it's announced.
Yeah.
We know about the scandal about that, so I'm not going to discuss that tonight. My reason is for she contacted the Sunday Mail editor, Lorna Hughes, and she's desperate to save her job. She told Lorna Hughes that I've got six women who have come through the rape crisis unit who are willing to speak to you and tell you that I'm a decent person, that I should keep my job. Unsolicited, she was sent emails from these six people, all telling her that that she was a great woman and she should keep her job. Now, there's no suggestion their names would have got out in the paper. They wouldn't have done.
No.
But the point is, a CEO of a rape crisis is actually phoning up women who have suffered trauma of rape and asking them for help to save
testimonials.
It's
like a trust pilot. How was your experience at the Rape Crisis Centre? 4 stars or 5. I mean,
well, I think it's for one, it's unprofessional. I think morally, it's really questionable. How are women meant to trust this crisis centre if there's a possibility that the names might get out, which is a possibility with this woman, and it's a possibility that they've gone through all this trauma, they've gone through all this agony, what destroys lives, and next minute you're having a woman phone you up saying, look, I'm in a spot of bother with my highly well-paid job. Can you come out and name yourself and tell a newspaper that I'm a great person?
Yep.
That I find that absolutely astonishing. And for that alone, she should have lost her job. And for that alone, I'm putting her forward as my Zoomer of the week.
Very good.
That's a pretty strong candidate. Now, just to go back a little bit, she's the person that hired.
Yeah.
Is she the person that hired this?
She is, but she's denied it. She's denied
it. Wada.
Yeah, she's denied it. She said, I didn't know anything about it, and I wasn't the actual person who hired it.
Who hired them then?
I think an investigation has found that she knew her before she got the job, or him, or whoever, however you want to put it. She knew that person before she got the job. That's been proved now, I think, and I think she did have something to do with that person getting the job. So all round, I find it quite distasteful, and I think women deserve better than that.
Well, the whole thing is distasteful. I mean, it's a crackpot idea. I mean, whoever in their right minds thought that a trans person could be the head of a rape crisis centre? It's just complete ideology gone mad. It's absolutely crazy. And when women are in the worst situation that can happen to them, right, then they have to be. This person was calling them bigots for not accepting a man to come in and inspect them and stuff like that. For God's sake, absolutely ridiculous. The whole thing is just, I mean, it should be burned, it should be nuked. It's just such a disaster. And these people should be absolutely hauled over the coals for this. And you're quite right, Mark. I think that's the thing. Now, we are going to bring back the one and only Zoomer Queen, Mary.
I've always liked Mary.
Yes, Mary. And so Mary is.
This is your time to make your final please.
Right. So far we have me by Gillian Martin.
I would say
warrior.
Yeah. So Gillian Martin. I think if I was judging on hypocrisy, I think Gillian Martin would win. And I liked your comment, Mark, about Nat Zero.
Yes, and Nat Zeros.
So very good. David, you said John Swinney. Basically with his mandate ramblings, and he's completely in denial. That's an ongoing situation. I mean, it's
ongoing
just,
rambling.
Very, very much. It's just going to go on. Mark Z with Sandy Brindley, phoning up women asking for testimonials. My God, it's like rape crisis trust pilot. I mean, it's outrageous. So what I am judging on tonight, because there isn't a funny one, to be honest, right? They're not funny. I mean, they're just ridiculous more than funny. So tonight I'm judging on which one has the most consequence and which one is the most disturbing. And that would be Mark Z is the winner. Sandy Brindley, because you're right, Mark, women do deserve better.
Well, everyone deserves better than that.
Everyone deserves better.
But of course, especially women, it's absolutely horrific there. It says here, it seems you need a crisis centre for rape crisis centres.
Sorry, what was that?
It says, it seems they need a crisis centre for rape crisis centres.
Yes.
Good point.
There we go. Right, Mary, thank you for that nomination and selection. And a huge congratulations to Mark, although it's not something really to be congratulated on in the sense of it's an awful situation. Right. Okay. So we are so happy. Thank you for being with us on the show. So happy to have you with us every Wednesday. It's been a special privilege to be with David and Mark, Z and Mary tonight. We'll see you again next week. I think this isn't written right. I always fumble in this part. We'll see you same time, same place next Wednesday. I don't know. I can never get past that. All right. Anyway. My thought for the week is the biggest lie from nationalist chancers is that minority of separatists in one part of the UK have the right to break up the entire country. All of this stuff we talked about today, this Kezia Dugdale new thing is up as well. It all indulges this idea. If we get enough separatists in Scotland, we can break up the entire UK. Who ever thought that is actually a reasonable idea? Separatists, of course. Everyone else should just go, no, we're not going to indulge this nonsense anymore. No more referendums on breaking up our country. No other country does it. Civil wars have been fought over it. American Civil War was fought over this exact reason. We are one country. And this is, please, they have to stop indulging this. Anyway, sausages, exactly. I'll release the hostages as well. Anyway, Thank you all for your support. And thank you to Mark.
Thank you very much.
And David.
Good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Great comments. Good to be back. Lovely to be here again.
And to you, Mary, as well.
Thanks, everyone, for all your comments tonight. I appreciate that.
Right, so we'll see you again next week. Thanks all. Take care. Bye now.
Good night.